Hello everyone, my name is Masha and today I'm going to teach you how to make this simple candy cane friendship bracelet. So my voice is a little bit deep because I am a little bit sick, but hopefully you can get past that. The actual tutorial was filmed a little bit earlier, so it's going to be normal then. This bracelet is very simple, and I do think that a beginner could make this. However, I don't recommend that this be your first bracelet that you ever make. If you've never made bracelets before, I have a ton of beginner content, but specifically I have a chevron tutorial, which I believe is the best bracelet to start with if you've never made bracelets before. I'll leave that linked in the card and in the description for you. I go into a lot more detail in that video. I'll still be going into detail here, but I definitely don't think this should be your first bracelet. However, this could be your second, third, fourth, whatever kind of bracelet, and I think that you should be fine going into this, provided you know how to do the basic knots and you've done them before. So that said, let's get right into the tutorial. So by taking a look at the pattern, you can see that it's mostly consisted of backward knots. But I do know that for a lot of people, including me, doing forward knots is easier than doing backward knots. So I decided to flip the pattern horizontally so that most of the knots become forward knots. This really doesn't change the pattern, it's just horizontally flipped, so the candy canes are sort of pointing the other direction. So I'm going to be demonstrating with the flipped pattern so that most of the knots become forward knots to make it easier. But if you want to follow the original pattern, then when I say forward knot, make backward knots, and when I say backward knots, make forward knots. I hope that's not too confusing. I just know that beginners prefer making forward knots, so I thought I would make that change before I start. So now, working with the flipped pattern, I decided to go with black as my background color, just as the pattern suggests. And I've got beautiful red and white here for the candy cane. So you want 3 strings of red, 2 strings of white, and 5 strings of your background color, which is black for me. I cut each of my strings to be about 1 meter long, and I've also left 10 to 15 centimeters of string just here out of frame under my tape, so that I can then use those to make the ties when I finished making the bracelet. So don't forget to leave some string for the ties when you sit down to make your bracelet. So here I've taped down my string to my table, and I've arranged my string in red, white, red, white, red, and then 5 of my black strings. And what we're going to do here at the start is incredibly simple. It's just going to be the basic candy stripe for quite a lot of rows, actually. As I mentioned previously, I wouldn't recommend this to be your first bracelet, so hopefully you've at least done the candy stripe or the chevron before, so you know what I'm talking about when I say make a row of forward knots. But what we're going to do first is we're going to grab the outermost red string, the one on the left here, and we are going to do a row of forward knots onto each string individually that follows it. So as you remember, a forward knot takes the string on the left, you put it on top of the string on the right, making a shape of a 4. You then put your finger into the loop under the string, grab this string with your nail, twist, pull it through, and then pull it up, and that's 1/2 of a forward knot. You then do another exact same knot, put your leading string over the other string, put your finger through the loop, under, and then twist and pull. Now if you want a more in-depth tutorial on basic knots, I do have one available, which is why I'm going to go a little bit quickly here. I continue doing forward knots on each individual string as I'm going through my bracelet. And there you go, now my red string is all the way on the right side of the bracelet. We moved it along each of the strings all the way to the right. So what we do now, according to the pattern, is we grab the next string, which is this white string, and we do exactly the same thing. We do forward knots on each individual string, also including this red string that's now at the end. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do individual forward knots on each of these strings. So essentially what we're doing here is we're doing a candy stripe. So there we go, we now have 2 stripes. We've got one red and one white stripe complete, and one red and one white string is now on the right, moved from the left all the way to the right. So what we're going to do now is we're going to continue doing these stripes of just forward knots from the outermost string all the way along each of the strings until the very end. And we're going to do this for the next red, white, red, and one black string. So all of the colored strings, we're going to move them from the left to the right, and then we're also going to move one of the black strings. And then once we complete that is when we actually go into making the candy cane and where the pattern starts to differ from a normal candy stripe. So I'm going to do exactly that. I'm going to take these 4 strings and then one by one I'm going to move them all the way from the outermost left edge of the bracelet by doing forward knots on each individual string all the way to the right side. So let me do just that, and then I'll catch up with you once we get into the actual candy cane. There we go, we've got the red, white, red, white, red and black stripes done. This is the point where we start getting into the actual candy cane. So far, we've only been doing rows of forward knots just like in the candy stripe. We've been taking the outermost string that is on the left and bringing it all the way to the right by doing forward knots on each individual string. To do the candy cane, we're essentially going to be doing the same thing, except on some of the strings, we're going to be doing backward knots instead. So at this point, you're going to be very careful in following your pattern. And here I can see that we're going to be taking the outermost string and we're going to be doing 3 forward knots on 3 black strings. So let's start by doing that. I separated the first string, which is going to be the leading string. Since we're taking this string and moving it all the way to the right, it's going to be the leading string. And I'm going to do a forward knot on 3 of these black strings, one by one. So we're starting out just like we were doing previously, forward knots. And now here is the first time we do something different. We take the next string, which is a red string, and instead of doing a forward knot like we did previously, we're going to instead do a backward knot, bringing out the red color. Now again, if you don't remember how to do backward knots, I do have a separate tutorial going very in depth into these knots, but essentially you take the string that's on the right, you put it on top of the string that's on the left, doing an inverse 4, sort of like a letter P, and then you do the same thing. You put your finger into the loop, under the string, grab the other string, twist it, pull it through, and then tie it up. And that's 1/2. You do another of these, putting the string on top, into the loop, under the string, grab the other, twist, pull it through. Now I'm going quite fast here again because I do have a very in-depth tutorial. So there you go. The first difference is here. We did a backward knot, and now you can see that there is a red knot right there. Now, grabbing the next string, which is a white string, and we do another backward knot since we need a white knot on this place. So we did 3 forward knots with the black string, then 1 backward knot with the red string, 1 backward knot with the white string, and now for this row that is done, we continue the row with doing forward knots with the black string. So we're just continuing in the regular candy stripe again. And there you go, you can see that the first row where we started making the candy cane is a little bit different already. So we've done that row. Now let's take a look at the next row. Grabbing the outermost string again, we take out 2 more strings, and we're going to grab this black string, which is the leading string, and do 2 forward knots, 1 on each of these strings. Now here we go back into the candy cane. The next string is the red string. We're going to do a backward knot. So we did a backward knot, bringing in the red string and making a knot of its color. But after that, we don't need any more colored knots. We're just gonna do forward knots with the black string until the end of the row. Alright, and next up we have the third row of the candy cane, which is actually the most interesting. It has the most color. Let's take out the outermost string, which is this black string, and we're just gonna do one forward knot this time onto the next string, which is also a black string. And then for this row, since we're going to be doing the long stem of the candy cane, every single colored string that follows is going to be doing backward knots onto this black string. So starting with this red string, we do a backward knot onto the black string. Then the white string does a backward knot onto the black string as well. Then the next red string does a backward knot onto the black string, and so on for each of the colored strings. And there we go, each of the colored strings just did a backward knot onto this black string, and we're only left with black strings following it as well. So we're going to take the leading string again, and we're going to finish off the row with 3 forward knots onto each individual string. Alright, so the candy cane is finished. Last thing we need to do before repeating the pattern from the beginning is a row of forward knots with the remaining black string. So taking this back string, we're just going to do a row of forward knots individually on each string until we reach the end. And there we go, the pattern is complete. This is all that repeats in the pattern. All of the strings are back in the positions that we started in, and you can start by making the pattern all over again from the very beginning. So if you want to, you can rewind this video and start from the top. I'm going to go into continuing this pattern. I'm going to finish it up, and I'll be right with you. And there we go, the bracelet is now complete. I didn't do anything special for the ties, I just did simple braids, then tied an overhand knot at the end and cut off my strings. And I did that for both of the sides since, as you remember, we did leave some string at the top before the tape. So this is what the bracelet looks like in the end. You've got little candy canes and then the candy stripes separating each candy cane. And I think that this bracelet looks really, really cute. Definitely very festive, very Christmassy, plus it's very easy to make. So I think this can make a really cute DIY Christmas gift for someone you love. So there you go, I hope this tutorial was helpful for you guys. If you have any questions or anything you didn't quite understand, then leave a comment down in the description. If you need more information on how to do the basic knots, or if you are a beginner and you just in general need more information, I have a beginner's guide where I go through a lot of information for beginners, and I also have very detailed tutorials on all the knots and all the basic stuff for beginners, and I'll leave that linked in the description for you. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you're watching this close to when it's coming out, this pattern is actually one of the patterns for my December challenge, and if you want to take part in that, then check out my November wrap-up where I go over all the rules. I'll link that in the description as well. But other than that, I post videos on Wednesdays and Saturdays, and sometimes I also post bonus videos, and I will see you next time. Bye!